you're trying to get 1,000 shots out in 10 to 12 weeks, you need people who can program, who can schedule, who can actually do the work and that. And there are very few places in the world that there's enough density of talent. And as I say, if you go outside San Francisco and Los Angeles, London is really the only other place that you find a density of talent that goes back 10 to 20 years.
I think London is brimming over with talent. I mean, you've only got to look at the States and see how they have taken an awful lot of our domestic talent to realise that we have been producing some really great operators and artists.
What we've been able to do over the years is actually train people here who've then moved on, and they've gone on to work at ILM and Digital Domain and ManX up in Northern California. I can't think of one major American facility that does not have an alumnus or some alumni from here.
You have to be talking about 1,500, 2,000 people who work in creating digital effects in the London community, which is a very substantial amount. And if you combine that with our productivity, which tends to be higher than the West Coast, then you're talking about the ability to do 2 or 3 major movies at once in London without any great difficulty.
London remains very cost effective, and I think if you compare prices in London and the US, we always find that we're 15 to 20% lower. And I think the other thing that really attracts any American client to the UK is, I think, a sense that we get things done very quickly.
All the people at all the companies know each other. Most of them have worked together in a previous incarnation when, they went from, before they were at Moving Picture Company, they were at CFC. And so there's no sort of backbiting. Everybody is very used to working together. The way that visual effects are approached on a Bond movie is that we will try and do everything for real unless for some reason we can't.
The things with James Bond is that it's always been a very traditional practical effects, in-camera effects, big explosions, very little CG work.
The sort of shots vary. Everything from simple wire removals there's a lot of stunts, of course, in the movie. Simple wire removals right through to completely computer-generated elements.
There's really 3 companies who are working on the Bond film. Mara will have worked with all of us before. We all work using pretty much the same equipment. There's a good consistency of sort of end product.
I don't think there's any reason why, if the quality that's coming out of all of the houses is equal, you can't split it up. And in some ways, in fact, you can then choose specialists for special things. I've placed different sequences on this film with a particular company because I believe that's the attributes of that sequence suit the particular talent or character of that company.
For any community to be effective, it has to have the ability to be able to share the work. So it's not unusual for pictures to start out with one place, but for the workload to increase and the timescale to shorten. And so suddenly the ability to share work out and subcontract 2 or 3 other people is very important for the producer to feel that that ability is there.
It was very clear that if we didn't work together, we were never going to get big films like a Bond, or like Lost in Space, or The Avengers, or Entrapment, which has just been completed. Most of these films have actually been spread over more than one company, and there's no way that production could have done all those effects in this country if people didn't cooperate.
Soho is not a very big place, and all the companies are very close together. I mean, that's what I love about working in London, is that it really it's unique in the world. I mean, there is no place like Soho. I mean, it's really vibrant, and it has all the talent that you might require within walking distance.
There was one film with a lot of visual effects last year where actually everybody from all the companies used to collect once a week and go over to CineSite and view all their rushes all in the same room to make sure that they had continuity of style and grading and all kinds of things. But I don't think you would get that in the States or in any other country.
I spend a lot of time in Hollywood actually visiting the studios, and one of the questions that's most often asked is, fine, we believe you, we've seen the proof, we know that you can do great work, but what about practical effects? What about models, miniatures, tank shots and so on? Can you really do them as well over there as they can over here? And if we wanted a whole package, could we get it? And the answer is most definitely yes. CineSight can do it for you, and there are other companies in town who can do it for you. And we're not subcontracting anything. We will actually give you, from our own resources, supervisors, digital effects, practical effects such as explosions and so on, models and miniatures, cranes, second units, you name it, we can supply it.
The introduction of CGI computer effects has certainly changed the business. It's meant that some things which we would have done before are now done on computer, but on the other hand, there are various things which we can do now which can be helped with computer afterwards, which make our life much easier. And indeed, it's opened up a completely new area where we're doing things specifically for computers now so that they can be used as reference.
We always had problems in the past making a fully mechanical creature and being able to make it walk. That was always the difficult part. Now we can just dump that over the CGI guys, they can make the thing walk and we can do the rest. And also it gives people more confidence in doing the kind of shows like 10th Kingdom, where there's a great deal of special effects, but with new digital technology it's becoming more cost effective to do those kind of things, and scripts that might have been passed on before because they were too expensive to do are now becoming viable. And often there's a lot of CGI in there, but there might also be a lot of prosthetics, animatronics, etc., which comes our way. So we're quite happy about CGI, and it's something we've embraced rather than worried about or run away from.
I think actually it increases the demand for people like model makers and miniature effects, special effects, because all of a sudden you can do things with models and special effects that you never could do before, because you could really had to shoot them in one shot. You can now do a shot that involves a miniature element on a building together with a special effects element shot against black, with a CG, with 5 or 6 elements being generated by different departments and different skills. So I think in the long term, it's going to boost all the traditional areas as well.
On Entrapment, the production came to us to help them around the photography of this Patronus building, where obviously they could not afford it, it wasn't practical and it wasn't safe to go there and film. So the decision was made to build it as a miniature. Now, obviously the shape and texture of that particular building kind of warrants CG because it was very repetitive shape and style. But the decision was made to build it as a 45-foot model that you could get the camera very close to. And then all of it was shot against green screens with motion control photography so that we could do live action moves and then scale down those moves into the miniature.
It's quite a British tradition of doing work that is very seamless. The two projects that come to mind are The Beach, which is for Fox and starring Leonardo DiCaprio, in which you're creating a beach that doesn't exist, because obviously in the book it is the ultimate beach, and even though the locations were beautiful to start with, we had to actually enhance that digitally. And that's an example of both effects which are seamless as well as production techniques. In other words, you couldn't find that, so we were able to provide it. And Notting Hill was really nice because it's a lovely movie. It's a really good feel-good movie. And the sequence that we really enjoyed working on was the Four Seasons, where it's a very key emotional point in the movie. And so you don't want the effects getting in the way. And so there's this beautiful, seamless bit that gets the message across without people thinking, oh, I've just seen a special effects sequence.
He's going to walk right down Portobello, but during the course of this 1 minute walk, he'll pass through 4 seasons. So it shifts from sun to rain to snow and finally back to spring again, but with no spring in his heart.
I can't imagine making a film now without having digital effects somewhere in the film. But again, we're second to none, even though ILM is the one with the world reputation. I think we've got some companies here that are building world reputations, and Soho in some ways is the envy of the filmmaking world.
What I'd ask any American producer who's thinking of coming across here to shoot his movie to go back and speak to his head of production, if he's at Paramount or if he's at Warner's, because we've worked for both of these companies. That's before he leaves the studio. And then maybe to speak to some special effects supervisors. For example, we've worked quite a lot with Richard Urisic, who's an absolutely fabulous supervisor, who's an American. And those are the guys who can give American producers, I think, the soup to nuts on precisely what we do, how well we do it, and how they should set their expectations. And I would be amazed if he said anything else except, you should come across here, you should try it, it's just as good, it's cheaper. In some cases, it's better.